Hello aspiring developers, welcome back to today's session. We are going to tackle JavaScript, local storage, where we are going to tackle the setItem, the getItem, and the clear methods of the local storage. If you're ready for today's session, let's dive right in. Before we understand local storage, I would want to remind you of a simple website or rather DOM manipulation where we were tapping on a button and we were adding some elements to the page. If you do not remember that video, you can just watch event listeners. I believe it's video 42 or 41. So now when we tap on add animal, you notice that some animals are appended to the list of animals that we are currently having. But when we refresh our browser, we lose all those animals. This is because DOM adds those animals to the memory such that whenever the browser is refreshed, we lose that data that has been passed. So now today, local storage will help us in a way that when we refresh this browser after adding these animals, our animals will be persistent or rather will remain on the browser. So let's head to our Visual Studio Code and see all that in action. Here is a very simple HTML code that defines whatever we've seen on our browser. You saw the title local storage, you had the h1 animal gallery, then we had some div containers, one with a lion, one with an elephant. I believe these was elements, but it should be elephant. Yeah. Then we had the button to add the animal. We have our JavaScript linked and our CSS also linked. So our CSS is simply styling the container. The container that is the green container. Is it? Yeah, our main is the green container. Then we have, the green container is the main. Then we have our dot container where we are aligning those items to flex wrap and to justify content start. And then we also have the child div with a background of this color is a bit brown, so you can say the brown background. That is that small card that we are adding. We also have this button element, the one to add an animal when you tap on it. So that's the CSS that we are currently having. The JavaScript behind that code, I'm selecting first the button and the container, and then I'm creating a simple card and passing the child div class to that card. I have defined 3 animals, that is a cheetah, a buffalo, and a rhino. I've also defined their headers and I've also defined their texts. I am then defining an index initiated as 0. Then I'm passing an event listener of click to our button element and calling the add animal function. So our add animal function will clone the card. So the card is the one that we just, the div that we just created, known as child div, that brownish card. That brownish container is what we refer to as the card. So when this function add animal is cloned, I'm going to clone that card element or variable or object and store it in a new card object. But now I use the clone node such that we only get a copy of the node. If you directly append it, then it will be modifying the elements of the already passed card. So when you use clone node, then it just duplicates and then modifies the duplicate. So h3 will create an element h3, and you see that we're passing the text content headers, and we're passing the index, because you see that all these are stored in an array. So when you say index 0, it will access the first element of the array for the headers, the animal, and the text. So that is exactly what you are passing for the header, the image source, and for the alt, I just left the alt as animal, but still you can still have the alt as headers index. So just in case our image does not load correctly, we can be able to see our alternative as the name of the animal that we're trying to log to the to print to our DOM. Then for the description, I'm just creating a simple p tag. And finally, we are appending the H3 element, the image element, and the description element to our new card. So with all those appended to our new card, we now append our new card to our container. And because all these are stored in an array of elements, we are simply incrementing our array. Yeah, so that's what the code currently does. And that is why when it refreshes, we lose all our content because we have not stored these buttons anywhere, but we're just modifying it in the memory. So now let's learn something small on local storage. Let's first understand how to access local storage from the website. You can right click and tap on inspect. I believe my prompt, or rather my dialog box is not visible. So just right click and tap on inspect, or simply tap on Control Shift then I, and you see that you now have your developer tools. You can tap on this arrow and you choose on application. Yeah, okay, application. Yeah, so here you see we have our application. Allow me just handle this to that point. Yeah, you see on our application we have the manifest, the service, the storage. Now we want to deal with the storage. And in the storage, you see that we have session storage, local storage, cookies, the SQL, the IndexedDB, the shared storage, and all that. So today we're going to tackle the local storage. So when you tap on local storage, you will see that this one is accessing the URL that you're having on your website. So when you tap on it, you see that it stores data in key value pairs. And you know that key value pairs in JavaScript, these are simply object data types. Yeah, so now when we try and save this information such that we do not lose it when refreshing, we're just going to save this card as an object with a specific key such that when we refresh our browser, we will not lose that data. So let's head back to Visual Studio. But before we even head back to Visual Studio Code, let us look at some local storage functions. Yeah, so here we have the clear function of local storage. It's just used to clear everything that is present in the local storage. We also have the getItem method. This one takes the key and the value of the item that you want to store. Then you have the key. This method simply returns the value of the key that you provide that you want to see. Then you have the remove item where you pass in the key, and this one will simply remove the item, or rather the object, with the key that you passed as an argument to the remove item method. You also have the set item. The set item also appends objects to the local storage. That is, it also stores or loads data into the local storage using key value pairs. So the ones that we're going to focus most on is we can use the clear before we start loading our items. Then we can use the clear, will just use it here on the browser so you'll understand it. But we're going to focus mostly on getItem to retrieve data from the local storage, and remove item, not remove, but set item to add data to the local storage. So let's head over to our code editor and see this in action. You can also add some little styling to this website. To our IDE, you can start by having some little styles. And we know that the box sizing. We know about the box sizing and the font family. So in the main, we can maybe use some light gray shade. Let's use some light gray. Can use something like I believe F0 should be light gray. Yeah, that is light gray. For the padding, we can add it to about 20px, same to the margin, so we can have better separation and better spacing. Yeah, then to our H1, we also have some little margin to our H1 so that We have some spacing at the bottom. I noticed it was too congested, so margin just for the bottom, so not everywhere. Margin bottom. Also about 20 pixels. Okay, for the container, yeah, instead of justifying content at the start, you can just have a space around, yeah, to center these items horizontally. So space around, yeah, this will center them kind of horizontally. Then for the child div, that is the orange box, we can just leave it as that, and maybe add some small padding, just increase the padding to about 10 pixels. That also I noticed had some small spacing. For the margin, you can leave it at 10. For the border radius, okay, you can have some border radius for the child div. You can just add some border radius to the child div. Border radius, you say something like 8px to have some rounded corners. I can add some little box shadow to make it look a bit more appealing. The box shadow, let's just have a depth of 4px. You can pass 8px also. Then I can pass in the color of the shadow. Let's use the RGBA. Let's use RGBA so that you can pass in some little. Yeah, you can use 0.1. Yeah. So we have some little box shadow of almost a dark color. And finally, for the button, I believe the button, the color of the button was okay. The padding, you can just add some little padding. So, okay, you can just add it to 10. But you can also add for the bottom and the right. For the top and the right, sorry. Then, what else can we add to the button? Okay, the button, the margin. Also increase the margin just a bit, maybe 20, because we have our margins up there as 20. It will be good enough to have these also as 20. Yeah, then for the border to px solid is okay, and for the cursor is okay to be having a pointer. We can also have a border radius of 6 is okay. What else? Maybe just some little transition for the hover. Yes, let's just add some transition for that hover. It can transition all to be 0.3 0.3 seconds. 0.3. Yeah. So this will enable the smooth transition for the hover. For the hover, the background is white. We can change the background. You can only change the background and the color. So we can just invert this. And because we've already added some enough padding there, we can leave that new padding. So we just change the background and the color. Red is FF00. So let's maintain hex color codes. Weight is F the whole of 00. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. Same to this, you can also maintain the hex color code. Yeah. So when we hover, we just invert the text color and the button color. Yeah, so that's it for the styling. I believe that will be a bit better when we look at it from our browser. Now let's focus on local storage functionality. Yeah, now for the local storage, we are aware that local storage stores data in key value pairs or as objects. So instead of having these animals in this manner, we can simply pass them, or rather define them in an array that consists of objects. So we can simply say let animals equals, just let's use the const animals, and this one is going to be image, and change this to image. Yeah, then we pass in these animals as an array of objects. So array data type, then we pass them as objects. So the first animal will have the header. We'll have the header as sheeter. It will have the image, and pass in the image. This is the image. So let's pass in that image there. And we can also pass in the alternative text. So this is the alternative text. Or better still, you can define an object and then you call this within those objects. This is our header, so this will be our image source, the key for the image source, and this will be the alternative text. Yeah. Then we do the same for all the other three animals. So I'll just copy this, paste it 3 times, and this time here we are passing the buffalo. And for the buffalo, we'll just have here buffalo.jpg. So buffalo. Then you say this is a buffalo. And finally, we'll be having the rhino. The rhino. Here, just pass in rhino.jpg. And we say this is a rhino. Yeah, so we can peacefully remove this now. Now we have all our animals, or rather every animal that we want to append to the elements, we have them in as objects. Okay, it is also good practice to have all of them. So allow me remove this one also. So we only have the lion, and we have the space of appending several objects. So let's add this data here also. Now here for the header, we'll have elephant. So header will have elephant. For the image source, you can pass in the image for the elephant, and for the alternative text, we can pass in this is an elephant. Let's just maintain the naming. This is an elephant. Yeah. So we've restructured this website such that we only have the lion being displayed. And now from JavaScript, we have passed 4 other animals to our animals object array. So we have an array known as animals, and this array stores values with the data types of objects. So this is our first object, cheetah, the second object, buffalo, the third is a rhino, the fourth is an elephant. Yeah, so that's it for our animals array. So what we've done here, we've just defined the animals data. So we've simply defined animals data. So now what's the next thing? The next thing we may want to do is to load these animals from the local storage. So just come and say load animals data from local storage. we may definitely want to implement some functionality of displaying that data. So let's just add a to do here, and we say that we will be required to display the loaded data. Then another thing that we can do, we may need to add the current animal to the container. So we can need to add current animal. Remember, when you tap the add item, the add animal button, it will append the current item. You saw that from the website. So just say add current animal, and we're adding this to the container. So to the container, that is that greenish container that we now gave it a grayish background. So add current animal to the container. Yeah, so this will just pick the animal that you tapped on add item and append it. It will now do this add animal functionality. But you have to remember that because we are going to save this data in the local storage, and local storage takes values in key value pairs, or rather stores data in key value pairs, we may need to increment our index. So increment index. Another important thing that we may want to do, we may want to save the updated animal to the local storage. So now that we have our current animal to the container, we have it added to the container to mean that it's visible to the user, and we've incremented the index. Now the next thing is to save it. So we're also going to save it. So save, going to save the updated animals data to the local storage. So we save to the local storage. Allow me use ls. Yeah. Then I believe that's it for now. Can now start following through all this step by step. So now when we want to load the animals data from the local storage, first and most importantly, it will be important to check whether or not there is any animal in the local storage. So you can simply use if statement. You know that if is a conditional statement to help us make some decision. So we're going to check. Okay, I see that my prettier is complaining. Oh, it's okay now. So we want to load animals from local storage. Yeah. So as I said, we just first check if the local storage has any animal. So we simply use the local storage dot get item, and you see that get item returns the current value associated with the given key, or null if the key does not exist. So the key that we are going to use to store these animals, you'll just call it index. So dot get item, and the key that you're going to pass there is animals. And you see that it must be stored as a string. So animals is the key. And if local storage dot get item animals finds some available animals in the local storage, it should be able to display those animals. So yeah, so this is where display comes. But first, if you want to display these animals, you know that this data is being returned as a string, but we want to display them as an object. So we are going to borrow from JavaScript some JSON, the JSON functionality, where JSON will be used to convert this received data into either into a string or into an object. So we just call the JSON dot, and you see that we have stringify, and you see that JSON dot stringify helps us to, okay, it's not, is it visible enough? JSON dot stringify. it helps us to, okay, it's not visible enough. It helps us to convert from a to convert data from a JSON string to an object. Then we also have the dot parse, which converts from the JSON dot parse to convert a JSON string into an object, and the stringify from an object to a JSON string. So stringify makes it a JSON string, parse makes it a JSON object. Yeah, so you're going to use the dot parse. And when you use the dot parse, you now pass in the string that you want to convert to a JSON, the JSON string that you want to convert to an object. And the JSON string that you want to pass is this one that we are checking if exists on our local storage. So just copy this and paste it here, such that if there is any animal in the local storage, then this animal will be converted to an object, and it will be stored in the animals array. You see that we already have our animals array, so it will be stored in this animals array. So now that we already have that, the next thing is this one. We've just gotten it from the local storage. So the next thing that we would want to do is to display those animals. So simply say here display animals, and we'll have a function to display that specific animal that we've loaded from the local storage. Yeah, so now let's work with adding an animal. So if you want to add an animal, you see here that we have all this code, but you know that this code simply creates an animal container. So we can restructure this code to maybe say create animal container, because that is what this code does. It creates the animal container. So let us look at this code that creates our animal container first. We see that we say let new card equals card.clone node. We already talked about this clone node. Actually, we can even pass the dot create. Yeah, we can also pass this because it is all within that procedure. So let's just pass this into the create. Yeah, I hope this is visible enough. Yeah, so function create animal container. First, to define the card, which is a div element, and to the div we pass the child div. Then here you can now instead of cloning the node, you can simply say let h3 equals document.create element h3. Then now for the h3.text content, you will pass in the animals, then the text content is the header. So you'll simply pass in animals.header. So here you can simply pass in animals.header. And you already know that for the image source, we'll pass in animals image source. So animals image source, you can use either the dot notation or the bracket notation. So we can stick to the dot notation. Let's stick to the dot notation. And for the alternative, we can also have animals. For the alternative text, you can have animals dot alternative text. How is it? Yeah, you can simply pass here animals dot alternative text. For the description, yeah, we can still have animals dot alternative text for the description. Animals dot alternative text. Yeah. And then finally, we'll just call the new card dot append, and we append the h3, the image, and the description, and we simply append this. Yeah, now that we have removed the new card, so we don't need to append once again to the new card. Just pass them now directly. And here now we can simply remove this, because you remember we said there is a place where we're going to increment the index, and this is when we will be adding the animal to adding or rather saving the updated animal to the local storage. That is when we will need to increment the index. So in this create animal container, all that we need to do is just to create, and no creation is completed when we append that animal to our card element. So this is the card element, not the new card, to our card element. And because this function we're going to call it directly, you can simply return the card. Element. So now to display our animals, let us have a small function here. You can just have it below this function, display animal. And this function display animal, it is simply going to display all animals. Yeah. So first, we can start by saying animals. We know that animals is an object, and you just when you want to display each animal, obviously you are displaying an animal, not all the animals, just one instance of the animal in the local storage. So you'll simply say animals dot for each, so that you can look through the animals array, and here you want to return an animal, a specific animal, and this specific animal you can call it the new card. So you just say let new card equals, and this new card means that we are creating the card. We are creating this card now, this create animal container. So you can just say let new card equals, and then now you call the function create animal container. So for us to pass in this, card, we may want to, actually we can't access these animals inside this function if we do not pass it. So I believe we'll start by passing animals, the animals object, into this function, so that we can use the attributes of that animal object. So that's the first step that we forgot. We needed to pass this object as a parameter so that we can access it. And now when you call the create animal container, you will still need to pass in the animals object. So you pass in the animals object, and then now in this display animal, we are going to call the container.append, and we are now going to append the new card. Yes, so here we are passing the animals. Yeah, so let's just go through this piece of code one more time. You know that there is function scoped variables, global variables, and which other variables do we have? Yeah, we know of that. So you see that this const animals is defined outside everything. So this will be a global scoped variable. So now we want to use that global scoped variable inside our function. Create animal container. So first we'll pass in the animals, because we're creating the container for the animals, but now this time a specific container. So we pass in the animals, and to those animals we try and access the header. To these animals we try and access the header, the image source, and the alternative text. So that's why here we come and pass the animals.header, animals.source and alt text, and animals.alternative text. Then to that we append it to a new card. So this one simply creates an animal container, or we can still call it creates an animal card. Then once it creates an animal card from the animals object that has been passed, it returns that card. So anytime you call this create animal card, it will return the card that we just created, and the card has the h3, the image, and the description. So that is that brownish card. That is what the create animal card does. It creates the brownish card. So now we want to append the brownish card to our container, and you know that here we've already selected our container. So the bigger container, the one that was green, and we re-edited it to have to be, I believe, white in color. Yeah. So now we want to append our card to the bigger container. So you simply call the display animal function, and this display animal function, we don't want to only display one animal and finish it at that, but instead we want to loop through all the animals that we have, and then we print each and every animal. But for us to print each and every animal, then we have to pass in the animal itself. So we just say animals.forEach to loop through the animals array, and then when you loop through the animals array, we want to return an animal, and this animal that we are returning is the new card, or we can still call this the new animal card. And then the new animal card will simply call the create animal card function. You remember we edited this to the create animal card function, and this one will take as an argument animal, whatever you pass here. If you pass here element, so say element, this will take as an argument the element, and now to that element it will perform this function of appending the h3, the image, and the div. So once it creates that new animal card, you can now call the container.append, and whatever you are appending is the new animal card. So this one will now, when you append this new animal card to the container, it will now be visible to the user. So that is why we call this function display animal. So we have our function to display an animal, we have our function to create an animal card. Yeah. So the next thing that we want to do, we want to add now the animals to, the local storage. So here we have a button.click, button.add event listener, which listens for the click event and calls the add animal function. So allow me have this button just below the button definition, but you see that it calls the add animal function, which we currently do not have. So let's define a new function add animal. So we want to add the current animal to the container, to the local storage actually, or rather first to the container. So let's just say function add animal. So when this button is clicked, it will call the add animal function. So to this animal, we want to check first if the index of the animal is greater than the length of the animal, because you cannot add an animal that does not exist in the animals array. So you simply say if animals, sorry, not animals, but if index, because that is what we have. We've defined here an index 0. So we're going to check if index. So we'll check if the index is greater than or equal to animals dot length. You already know about the dot length property of an object. So if we try calling an index that is greater than the current elements that the current animals that we have, then whatever is in the add animal will not occur. So let's just simply say if index is greater than or equal to animals.length. You know that animals is an array, so it is 0 indexed. So So if it is equal to animals.length, then it means there is no data in that array. That's why we use greater than or equal to. So you can simply alert something like alert only big five animals can be added to the list. Yeah, and we can just return just in case the add animal is called. So yeah, if actually this return should be within the if statement, yeah, because we're using the alert, so we'll just return nothing. We return a null value. Now our if statement is complete, and we now want to add the current animal to the container. So here we are first checking if the index is greater than or equal to the animals.length, and we are just alerting a message to say that only big 5 animals can be added to the list. Now let's implement the functionality of adding the animals themselves. So implement. So you'll simply say let current animal. You let current animal, and you say equals to animals, and then index. So you're accessing the first index of the animal, because the current animal will be index 0. Then if at all it is incremented, then the next animal will be index 1. So here you can now come and say let current animal equals animals index. Then now, so the next time that you already have, or rather you've already selected the current animal, the next thing that you want to do, you want to pass this current animal to to be displayed. So you can simply come and say let new card, new animal card, and you equate it to the create animal card, and to this animal card we are now passing the current animal. Remember, this one we are adding to the container when we call the add animal method. So after that, you can simply say container.append, because we're adding to the container. So container.append, and we're appending the new animal card, just like we were doing below when displaying the animal. So remember, this display animal will be used to display animals from the local storage. But this add animal, this is used to add animals to the website. So get those two differences. Add animal function is adding the animal to our website directly, but display animal is displaying from the local storage. Yeah, so the next thing that okay, we already have this container.append new animal card, but we want to increment this index. Want to increment the index every time this function is called. So when you tap on that button for the first time, it will pass in animal with index 0. When you tap the button again, it will call the animal with index 1 until it goes to the animal with index 3. And then now 4 will be equal to 4, and it will alert that only big 5 animals can be added to the list. Yeah, so now we already have our we have already incremented the index. Now we want to save the updated animals data to the local storage. If you've noticed, we've been going step by step. We started with defining the animals data, then we came to loading animals data from the local storage. So if at all there is any data in the local storage, we use the getItem method of the local storage to get that data. Then we now add the current animal to the container by calling the add animal function. So this add animal function will check if the animal is there, and if the length is met, and if the length is not met, then it will simply call that alert method. If the length is met, it will simply have the current animal variable storing the index, or rather the animal within that first index. Then it will have another new animal card to call the create animal card function, and you know how the create animal card function works. And then container.append, such that it will this new animal that we've tapped on, add animal button, will be appended to the container such that it's visible on our website. And after we do that, because we are using the index to view this current animal, we are going to increment our index. So the last thing that we want to do is to save the updated animals data to the local storage. So you know that for us to save data in the local storage, we simply need to tap the local storage, then dot. We need to call the setItem method of the local storage. You see that it takes data in key value pairs. The key must be a string, the value must be a string. And you see that it sets the value of the pair identified by the key value pairs, creating a new key value pair if none existed for key if none existed for the key previously. So if there is an existing one, it overrides. If there is no existing one, it creates a new one. So now we want to pass in the key, but remember the key has to be a string. And you remember here we are getting the item using the key of animals. So that is the exact same key that we will use to set the items. Then the second value should also be a key. And you know that the second value you want to store the JSON, or rather the animal object. So for us to store an animal object as a string, we once again call the JSON. But this time we are converting it from a JavaScript value to a JSON string. So we call the stringify method. And in the stringify method, whatever we want to stringify is the animals object. So here you notice that dot stringify, or rather dot set item method of the local storage picks key value pairs, that is the key that you are using to store the animal, and the value is the animal itself. But because the animal is an object, you have to use the dot stringify to store it as a string. And here we have the JSON.parse. When you're now trying to bring those data back to our website for viewing, you bring them back as, remember you stored them as a string, so you're now bringing them back as a string, and that's why we call the JSON.parse to convert this string to a JSON object, and then it can now be displayed. So that's it for the loading animal, adding current animal to the container, and saving the updated animal to the local storage. So now let's run this on our website and see all that in action. Yeah, so the updated styling, I believe, is much better than the previous one. Notice that the previous one you were having the first field there, though it is still not mobile responsive, but at least it's better than the first one. So here we have our add animal. When you tap on add animal, you see that it adds the cheetah to the list. And I want us to also observe our how is it called, our local storage. So just go to application. So you see that our local storage has these 4 animals. So when you tap on add animal again, you see that now buffalo is being appended to our local storage. When you tap on add animal, see now that we have the rhino being appended to our items in the browser. When you tap on the last add animal, you see that elephant is also being appended to our browser. So when you now refresh, Okay, when you refresh, you still lose the data. So let us go through the code once again. We see where we haven't passed it correctly. But you see that our local storage has all the data correctly. The alt text, the header, and the image. So it means that we are not loading correctly. So let's go and look at how we load the data to our website. So the problem is with displaying the animal. So animals.forEach. This one is calling the animals. Okay, sorry. See that this is calling a const animal set. We cannot try to reassign the value of an animal if at all it is declared as const. So let's redeclare this as let. Yeah, we redeclare it as let, and then we now see it from the browser. So let's refresh our browser and see if that plays the trick. So back to our browser. When we refresh, yeah, you see that all our animals are now there in the local storage. You can simply call the local storage.clear. At least we now have the chance to use the local storage.clear. So if you now refresh the browser, you see that we only have one animal. If you look at the local storage, how is it? Application, local storage, you see that all of them have been cleared from our local storage. So when you tap on add animal, see that the first animal is added to the local storage. So when you tap on add animal again, we have a new one. When you refresh, you still have them on the local storage. So that's it for the local storage. You can always use it to store some data that you want to persist. That is the data that you add using DOM. You know that DOM manipulation adds data, but now in the memory, the in-memory data, such that when you refresh the browser, all that data is lost. So you can just use the local storage in case you want persisting data to your DOM elements. So that's it for today's video. Thank you for watching to this point. Hit the like button, subscribe, and share. Have a happy coding week.